So in this video, we're going to talk about how to describe the domain and range of functions with endpoints. So remember that the domain is all of the possible x values of the function, and the range is all of the possible y values of a function. Depending on whether the function is discrete or continuous, we're going to describe domain and range differently. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about all continuous functions, so the domain and range are going to be described as inequalities. So let's look at this. So let's talk about the domain of a continuous function with endpoints. What I mean by endpoints is that you can see at the end of this graph, I have circles. Okay, I don't have arrows at the end of the graph. So that's what I mean by a function with endpoints. So to talk about the domain, I'm going to need to go and find the smallest x value, which is the leftmost point. So I'm going to draw in this line right here because my function does not exist to the left of that line. Then I'm going to draw in this line at the rightmost point. So you can see this is like the boundary of my function. So now I'm going to write the inequality going from left to right, and I'm going to use these signs. If at that point I have a closed or a filled in circle, I'm going to write a less than or equal to sign. If I have an open circle, that value is not included, so I'm going to use a less than sign. So let's start off with the smallest value. The smallest value is at -3. So -3, you can see I have a filled in circle at -3. So that is going to be a less than or equal to sign. Since I'm talking about the domain, I'm going to write x. Okay, because I'm telling you all of the possible x values. Now my next endpoint is at 2. So I'm going to write 2, but then notice at 2 I have an open circle. So when I have an open circle, I'm going to use a less than sign. So my domain is -3, less than or equal to x, less than 2. And you can see that's where I have all of my x values on this graph. So now let's write the range of a continuous function with endpoints. So remember, when we're talking about range, we're going to go lowest to highest. So we're going to go from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to draw in this line right here. That is the lowest value. And then I'm going to draw in this line right here, which is the highest value. So that lowest value is at y equals -5. So I'm going to write -5. I have an open circle at -5. So I'm going to write less than. And since we're talking about range, I'm going to write y. Okay, it's very important that range goes with y, domain goes with x. Now I'm going to write the highest value. So you can see the highest value is here at 2. So I don't have an endpoint at 2. At 2, my function just continues, right? But as long as you don't have an open circle there, you can include that value, okay? Because that value of 2 is actually included in my graph. So the range is -5, less than y, less than or equal to 2. And you can see all of these y values are included on my graph. So let's try some more examples. Let's describe the domain and range of the function pictured in this graph. So for domain, remember I'm going to go left to right. So I'm going to draw in this line right here. And that's my leftmost value. Here is my rightmost value. So I'm going to start off at -1. So I have -1. It's an open circle at -1. So I'm going to write less than. Domain always goes with x. And then I'm going to write my rightmost point, which is 5. I have a filled in circle at 5, so I'm going to write less than or equal to. Now let's talk about the range. So I'm going to draw in a line at the lowest value and then the highest value. So the lowest value, it's not written on this graph, but we know that everywhere along the x-axis, y equals 0. Okay, so that lowest value in the range is going to be 0. I have a filled in circle there, so I'm going to write less than or equal to, and then range goes with y, so I write y. Then my highest value is at y equals 4. So I'm going to write 4. I have an open circle there, so I'm going to write less than. Okay, so those are my domain and range. So for this graph, let's start off by describing the domain. Okay, so I'm going to find wherever the leftmost point is and draw in a line there. And then I'm going to go to the rightmost point and draw in a line there. And so when we used to do this in brick and mortar school, I used to have my students put Post-its on either end. So you can do that if you like. If you have like a large stack of Post-its and you don't like drawing in these dotted lines, you can put a Post-it at the left point and the Post-it at the right point. So let's try describing the domain. Okay, so the leftmost point is at -3. That -3 is included. So I'm going to write less than or equal to. Domain is X. And then my rightmost point is at 5. So I write 5. It's an open circle at 5, so I write less than 5. Now let's work on the range. Okay, so you can draw a line or put a Post-it at the lowest point, which is -4. And then we're going to draw a line or put a Post-it at the highest point, which is 2. Okay, so let's write the inequality. So at -4, that we haven't filled in circles, so we're going to put less than or equal to. Then we write y because it's the range. The highest value is 2, so I'm going to write less than 2. And that is the domain and range. Okay, now let's try the domain and range of this graph. So we start off with the leftmost value, which is right here. We go to the rightmost value, which is here. So the domain is going to start at -5. That value is not included because I have an open circle, so I'm going to write less than. Domain is X. And then I have my rightmost point, which is 5. Once again, we have an open circle at 5, so that is not included, so we have a less than sign. Now let's do range. So if we draw in the range, it goes from here at -2 to 2. Okay, so my range is going to go from -2. Once again, I have an open circle, so that's less than. My range is y. And then we go to the highest point, which is 2. So that is less than 2. So remember, to find the domain, you're going to look for the x values going from the leftmost value to the rightmost value. To find the range, you're going to look for the y values going from the lowest value to the highest value.